Our second reading is from John's Gospel, chapter 15, verses 12 through 17. It can be found on page 878 in your pew Bibles if you would like to follow along there. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends, because I have made known to you everything that I have heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and I appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask him in my name. I am giving you these commands, so that you may love one another. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. It was close to 19 years ago this fall that I started my first position as a senior pastor and head of staff of a new church. I had spent the previous 5.5 years as an associate pastor, and because of that very good experience with a wonderful church and an excellent mentor, I felt called to try my hand at being a senior pastor of another congregation. So, about 5 months into my new call as pastor at that church, it was Easter. My first Easter, in which I was in charge of what would happen in worship, my first Easter to preach, all that. I was excited. And I had an idea. You know how at Easter there are all the lilies that are up front and they make the sanctuary so beautiful and so forth, and the sanctuary just kind of sparkles with the anticipation of Easter. The paraments are white. It all looks gorgeous. You know that, right? Nod your head that you're still with me. Yes, good. It was the same at the church that I was serving, but I had this idea that we needed to visually show the transformation from Good Friday to Easter. In other words, not everybody who attends Easter worship has been in worship on Good Friday, and in fact, some of those attending Easter worship had probably not been in church since Christmas. So I wanted to visually show how you need Good Friday in order to have Easter. You need a death in order to have a resurrection. So what I wanted to do, and I explained to the ushers and some of the elders that I wanted to do, was have the congregation walk in on Easter morning, and everything would still look like Good Friday. In other words, no lilies to be seen, black cloth covering the communion table, the pulpit and lectern stripped bare of any paraments, and everybody walking in would be shocked and surprised and wonder what was going on. And then we would start worship, and the congregation would sing, "Jesus Christ is risen today." And all the ushers and some of the elders would bring in the lilies at that point and drape a white cloth instead of the black cloth over the communion table, and bring in the white paraments and put them at the pulpit and the lectern. And it would be a wonderful visual shift for the congregation to see Easter's arrival. We didn't have a stone that we could roll away from the tomb, but it would still be dramatic and it would be glorious, and everybody would remember that Easter forever and ever. Well, everybody remembered that Easter forever and ever. What do you think happened? Instead of wonder and transformation, it looked like chaos. All these ushers and elders scrambling to get everything up there, the lilies and the paraments, before the first hymn ended. They were bumping into one another. Somebody almost tripped bringing it up. The effect was not, oh. The effect was, whose idea was this? I mean, they were a very gracious church, and they rolled with it. But I do remember one person who approached me afterward. He had been on the committee that called me to that church, and he said, "Ben, the whole bring the lilies in thing during the first hymn, was that your idea?" Yes, I said, yes, that was my idea. Don't worry, we'll go back to standard operating procedure at Easter next Easter. Whose idea was this? That's not just the question that the congregation I served all those years ago was asking on my first Easter there, and it's not just the title of our sermon this morning. Whose idea was this? That is also the question that I would like you to consider when it comes to church, when it comes to Westminster Presbyterian Church. Whose idea was this? We have spent the past 10 weeks exploring the vision of Westminster. What's the vision? What's the vision? You can tell me what the vision is. Please tell me what the vision. Open minds, open hearts. Good, good. And we've discussed the 5 core pillars, the values that we use around here to measure our decisions: hospitality, generosity, justice, imagination, and joy. We've talked about 3 goals for the coming year: connect, serve, grow. And in fact, one of you came through the line after worship this fall, and you had the insert to the bulletin in your hand, and you said, "Ben, this is really good." After all, the insert lists all that in the bulletin: vision, values, goals, it's all right there. Now, I didn't have time to say it then, but I'll say it now. Anything good that comes out of this naming of our vision, naming the 5 pillars that guide our decisions so that our actions and values and vision are all aligned, anything good that comes out of that, it did not just come from me. I am indebted to my splendid colleagues with whom I work. They helped begin this discussion with me about our vision and our values well over a year ago. I am indebted to them for helping me think about the vision of our church in a more intentional way. And I'm indebted to conversations with the leadership on the session, at the session retreat last spring, or meetings this fall. And any good that comes out of this in the future, and I believe there will be good that comes out of this in the future, it is also because of you, because of your hospitality, because of your generosity. It's not like I dreamed these up as new values for our church. You already had them. I had seen them in you. And part of what this sermon series has tried to do is point out examples of the ways that Westminster lives those values and pillars out. Heck, even putting it all together in a bulletin insert, that wasn't my idea. One of you came up to me after worship at the very end of August. We had just started the sermon series, and you said, "Ben, you need to put this on paper so I can stick it on my refrigerator." In other words, it's a team effort, right? Whose idea was this? I'd like you to think about this question, not just in terms of our vision and pillars and goals. I'd like you to think about that question in terms of you, in terms of your presence here today. Whose idea was it? Is your being here at Westminster, is that your idea? Did you choose to be a part of this church? On the one hand, sure. You decided at some point to visit this church, to join this church, to become engaged in the life of the church. Of course it was your decision. But was it really your decision? According to our text for today, according to Jesus, the answer is no. You and I did not decide to be here. We were chosen. Chosen by Jesus to be here. Do you remember what Jesus said? "You did not choose me, but I chose you." In other words, God's church is not ultimately our idea, it is God's idea. It is the Holy Spirit at work in each of our lives, bringing us together in ways that we never could have done on our own. "You did not choose me," Jesus said, "but I chose you." All right, let me pause right there and ask, what is that like to be chosen? To be chosen for something. What is that experience like? When we talk about being chosen, there is often a sense of anticipation, right? a sense of being rewarded, a sense of fun that goes about with it, chosen to play on the football team for your high school, chosen to be the captain of the team, chosen to receive an award that you were not expecting, chosen for a promotion, chosen for a new job. Being chosen can be the greatest affirmation in the world. And not being chosen, well, that can feel like the biggest disappointment in the world. But if we are talking about Jesus choosing us to be a church of open minds and open hearts, well, being chosen means something a little different. It's not about a reward for hard work. It's about responsibility to do God's work. It's not about success, it's about service. It's not so much about going up, it's about going down. It's about doing things that sometimes we don't always think we can do, or want to do, or think we have the time to do, or imagine we have the gifts to do, but we step forward and do those things anyway because Jesus chose us to do them. I'll never forget Will Willimon, retired bishop in the Methodist Church, native of Greenville, still teaches at Duke. He once told a story from his days as a bishop in Alabama. One of the churches that was under his jurisdiction had a food ministry for people who were experiencing homelessness in the city of Birmingham. And one morning, Willimon went to the church and he went to the breakfast that they were serving and he stuck his head in the kitchen to say hello. And he saw somebody there who he was surprised to see. It was a well-to-do gentleman that he had met a few weeks prior to that. Somebody from another church, a suburban church, a very affluent church. This person was in the kitchen and he was washing the dishes. Well, Willimon said, "Hey, glad to see you here. Have you always enjoyed working with people who are homeless?" To which this man replied, "Who told you I enjoyed this? Working in a hot, stuffy kitchen in the morning before I go to work, lots of these people who are here, they're suffering in ways that I've never seen before. I can't really do anything to help them with that. They've got problems beyond my abilities. I don't really like this one bit." Well, Will Willimon was stunned, and he replied, "Well then, how did you get here at 7 in the morning washing a bunch of dirty dishes?" To which the man replied, "How did I get here? I got put here by Jesus. How did you get to be where you are?" Whose idea was this? Whose idea was it for all of us to gather here at the corner of Augusta Street and West Augusta Place on Sunday mornings? Not our idea. Not even the charter members of this church's idea. It was God's idea. God has chosen us. And that choosing doesn't have anything to do with our resumes, and it doesn't have anything to do with whether we get straight A's. God has chosen us for a very specific purpose, and that purpose is love. Love. That is the reason for our existence. That is the reason God created God's church. "You did not choose me, but I chose you," Jesus said. "I am giving you these commands so that you may love one another." That is the purpose. That is the point. To love one another, meaning anyone who is a part of your church family, anyone who is a friend to you or a stranger to you in this room, you are called to love. Show of hands. I know you love it when I ask you to raise your hand on Sunday morning. Show of hands. How many of you enjoy talking with your friends and seeing your friends on a Sunday morning when you come to church? How many of you like that? Yes, good, exactly. All right. How many of you make a point? You don't need to raise your hand on this one. How many of you make a point every Sunday that you come to find a face that you don't know and welcome that person and greet that person, even if that person is somebody that you have seen time and time again and you know that you're supposed to know their name and now you've forgotten their name and you're going to go up and reintroduce yourself? How many of you make a point to do that every Sunday morning? Don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. Think about what would happen if you said to yourself once a month, "I'm going to get to know somebody new around here. And I'm going to stay connected to that person. And I'm going to follow up with that person. That would be 12 new connections by the time the year is done. And you just might be contributing to this church's growth. Jesus Christ, if you did that, just might be working through you, because it is a good way to love one another, and not just love the people in this room, right? But also the people outside this room. Our first text today from Matthew. In that text, Jesus said, the greatest commandment is to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. That is the point of being chosen by Jesus, to love. Jesus has chosen you to share, to show, to spread the self-giving, sacrificial, do for others before you do for yourself, bless your enemy, even if they don't care that you're blessing them and it's at great cost to you, kind of love. That is what Jesus has chosen you for. Now, how does that feel? Do you wake up every day thinking, oh boy, I get to forgive somebody I don't feel like forgiving today? I get to serve somebody I don't really feel like serving today. How does it feel now to be chosen by Jesus? Don't answer that. Don't answer that. We've spent the past 10 weeks exploring the vision of our church, open minds, open hearts. And I am excited about that vision. I am excited about the direction that the Holy Spirit will lead us as we live that vision out. And I hope all of us remember that there is a bigger picture than even that vision. The bigger picture is love. That is the reason we exist. The point and purpose of being God's church is love, not Hallmark love, not sentimental love, but Jesus love. And you know what Jesus love is, right? Jesus love is love the Pharisee, even though I dislike the Pharisee kind of love. Jesus love is love your coworker who is really getting under your skin by going the extra mile for your coworker kind of love. Jesus love is love the world by hanging out with the poor, by giving voice to the voiceless, by working for justice for the shamed and the shunned and the ignored kind of love. Now, if that doesn't really feel good when we're doing it, I don't think Jesus cares. Of course, you and I could stand back, take a look at this big picture, and say, no. We could opt out. We could opt out at any time. We could say, I don't want to love people who will be difficult to love. I don't want to forgive people whom I don't feel like forgiving. I don't want to give my money to a church community that might sometimes conflict with my politics, Jesus. I don't want to give my time and energy and effort to something that might lead me to the cross instead of a comfortable retirement, Jesus. So yes, we can choose to opt out. We can say no to this kind of love anytime we want, but before you do that, I want you to think about the reason you are here today. Was it your choice, or was it God's choice? Whose idea was it? You see, I believe that you're here because God has chosen you, and God has chosen you. And God has chosen you. And you're wondering whom I'm going to point to next, aren't you? God has chosen you, and you, and you. There are too many people for me to say all the yous, so I'm just going to say all y'all. God has chosen all. That's a biblical expression. Did you know that? God has chosen all y'all. Each of you has some gift that the living Lord has given to you. That gift will share and show God's love in the world. That gift is essential to this church's vision of open minds, open hearts. When you think about the gift that God has given you to show God's love in this world, what do you think that gift is?